I've always been a big fan of RTS games like Total War and Dawn of War, but since I prefer to play games on my Xbox, I've never gotten a chance to play anything and had to be content with watching others build armies and lead them to victory. However, last Christmas, I got Halo Wars 1 and 2 as gifts and could finally play an RTS. I had a blast playing them, but not too long ago, the flagship game of a similar genre to RTS games got a new entry to the franchise, Civ 7. I always thought that the idea of building a civilization as a famous historical figure sounded really friggin' cool, not all that dissimilar to certain aspects of Total War, and that got me thinking, what if I tried to beat Halo Wars only using the tactics of one of the most iconic world leaders in the Sid Meier's Civilization series, Abraham Lincoln? Could the strategies he and his generals used in the Civil War defeat the Covenant and the Flood? Well, I put up a poll with Lincoln, as well as leaders from Dawn of War, Total War Warhammer, and even a wild card from Dynasty Warriors. But, it seems like you guys wanted Lincoln as much as I did, so that's just what we'll do. Well, one problem, I don't really know anything about Lincoln's wartime strategies, like, at all. So to help me out here, I used ChatGPT. For this run, ChatGPT will act as my advisor, will refer to me as President Lincoln, and will tell me what strategies to use in order to act as Abraham Lincoln would. This run will be done on Legendary difficulty, and I must defer to the advisor on what strategies I should use as to beat the game as Abraham Lincoln. This challenge was played on the definitive edition of Halo Wars on the Xbox Series X. Alright, with the rules out of the way, let's find out if you can beat Halo Wars as Abraham Lincoln. To start, I explained the challenge to ChatGPT as well as its role, and this is what it had to say. Understood, President Lincoln. I stand ready to serve as your loyal military advisor. You are assuming the mantle of command not as a field general, but as the great unifier, strategist, and moral compass, just as you were during our nation's darkest hour. While you may not shoulder a rifle or personally man the artillery, you direct the flow of war with clear vision, patient resolve, and iron principles. President Lincoln, your strategic style hinges upon several key doctrines. Number 1, preserve the Union, or its sci-fi equivalent. Your first priority is the long game, unity and victory, not personal glory. You focus on decisive objectives that'll break the enemy's will and ability to fight, not just winning battles. 2, utilize superior industry and manpower. You believe in leveraging the full weight of your economy. Mass production of troops and machines, constant resource gathering, and building supply lines takes precedence over flash or elite forces. The hammer of industry will crush the foe. 3. Emancipation of the battlefield. You seek the moral high ground. Any strategy that weakens the enemy's recruitments or frees up allied forces is preferable. In Halo Wars, that translates to cutting off Covenant productions at its source. Target their supply nodes, bases, and reinforcement paths to starve their war machine. Number 4. The Anaconda Plan. Much like the strategy to strangle the Confederacy during the Civil War, you would favor encirclement, blockade, and pressure. Slowly tighten your grip on the map, cut off enemy expansion, and restrict their territory until they wither. 5. Appoint and trust capable commanders. In the field, you allow generals like Grant and Sherman to carry out your directives once they've proven themselves. In Halo Wars terms, invest in and deploy your most cost-effective, reliable units and support them with logistics rather than micromanaging every skirmish. Now, President Lincoln, tell me the current mission and its challenges, and I shall recommend a course befitting your great office. What are the enemy's numbers, their strength, and the terrain you must command? First up is Mission 1, Alpha Base. This mission acts more like a tutorial to the game than a real mission, and all I really have to do is take Sergeant John Forge, a hero unit in a Goss Hog, and drive down a path while rescuing Marine survivors in order to mount a force to fight off the Covenant army at the end of the level so that I can recapture the titular Alpha Base. I explained the situation to my advisor, and here's what he had to say. Alpha Base, Legendary difficulty. A fitting trial for a man of your resolve, President Lincoln. The Covenant presses hard, your forces are battered, and time is scarce. Permit me, sir, to present a plan befitting your wisdom and character. Mission overview. Mr. President, you are in charge of reinforcing and securing Alpha Base, which has suffered great losses under the Covenant's siege. Your initial force is sparse, the enemy is overwhelming, but the path to victory lies not through rash action, but measured determination, as you so often preached. The Lincoln Plan for Alpha Base. First, conservation of resources. As a man who understood the power of industry and logistics, you would ensure every Marine, every Warthog, and every bullet serves a purpose. In this mission, avoid needless skirmishes, micromanage your Warthogs to kite and lure smaller Covenant groups into more manageable fights, and save as many units as possible until you reach the base. Number 2. The Anaconda Advance. Sir, you would not charge headlong into fortified positions. Instead, you would strangle the enemy's strength by systematically securing every resource crate along your path. Assign Warthogs to scout out and collect resources while avoiding direct combat when possible, and ensure the economy is fed, for industry wins wars. 3. Unity of Effort. When regrouping with Alpha-based survivors, you would rally your forces into a singular unified body, for as you once said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. Do not split your forces unnecessarily, and escort and consolidate survivors to increase your numbers before engaging larger Covenant groups. Number 4. Decisive Offense, Relentless Pursuit. Once Alpha Base is retaken, sir, you would act swiftly and decisively to fortify it, akin to placing Grant in charge of the war effort. Immediately queue up supply pads before any other structure. Then, establish barracks for infantry followed by vehicle depots, reinforcing your hold on the base. Then push forward only once your forces can sustain the pressure. 5. Moral high ground and proportional response. You, sir, would not needlessly waste lives. Pick fights you can win. Preserve your men. Utilize high ground positions, garrison structures, and defend rather than chase skirmishes. The mission's objective is not the destruction of every Covenant, but the survival and stability of Alpha Base. In summary for Mr. President, avoid unnecessary losses on the approach, secure resources like a nation feeds its army, consolidate forces at every opportunity, fortify Alpha Base quickly and prioritize economy, and launch only overwhelming prepared attacks once your industrial might allows. This is not a war of bluster, but of resolve. As you once guided our Union, so too shall you guide these troops to victory. When you are ready, Mr. President, brief me on the next challenge and I shall prepare the next plan. Now you might have noticed that, while the strategy presented was generally solid, it did get some details about the mission wrong. Details such as me being able to build on Alpha Base during this mission, even though this mission ends when you clear out all hostile forces. That is a product of rampancy, which is basically when an AI goes crazy. It's not too big of a deal. Sometimes plans will include units I don't have access to, like Spartans, or mention details that are entirely fabricated, but that's fine. I just adapted whatever plan the advisor gave me to work for the mission. After using Sergeant Forge to rescue a Warthog, I then lose said Warthog 5 seconds later against a turret. I've only ever played through Halo Wars once on the easiest difficulty, so I definitely wasn't prepared for how powerful the enemies were on Legendary. I had no idea how to micro or position, but I definitely figured it out soon enough. Well, after a really close call where I almost lost Forge, I was able to take down the Covenant attacking these Marines and gained a couple more Warthogs. I continued to fight my way through to Alpha Base and picked up some Marines along the way, though I lost a Warthog and Sergeant Forge got taken down in the process. That's fine since he's a hero unit and will revive after a while unlike normal troops, but he permanently loses his Gosshog, which is a horrible loss. Now I could, in theory, actually employ the Lincoln strategy I was given, the Anaconda Advance, by leading with Warthogs, but it would be kind of pointless since the only units I'd be leading would be 3 squads of Marines and Forge, who's now on foot. I rescued the last group of Marines, 4 squads of foot soldiers, but when I used my Marines to knock down the barrier the Covenant erected to keep us away from Alpha Base and tried to retake the base, I got jumped by their infantry, ghosts, and wraith tanks, and I got annihilated. I lost on the very first mission. That was pretty crazy and definitely tempered my expectations for the rest of the run. On my second attempt, now adhering more to the conservation of resources and unity of effort aspects of the plan, I was able to again fight my way through to Alpha Base, this time with minimal losses and having made use of the single heal I'm given for the mission. When I attempted to take back Alpha Base this time, I employed the tactic from the conservation of resources step to kite and lure small groups of Covenant towards the gate after knocking down the shield, so that my entire army consolidated together could take out their small pursuing forces, just as suggested in the unity of effort step. With that, I was able to work my way in and take out the biggest threat, the Wraiths, and clean up the remaining hostile forces and recapture Alpha Base, completing the first of 15 missions. Mission 2, Relic Approach, is our first opportunity to build a base, and our objective for this mission is to get into a nearby Forerunner structure and stop the Covenant from blowing it up. I asked the advisor to write up an Abraham Lincoln plan for this mission, but this time I used the search and reason functions to try to combat the rampancy. Here's what it came up with. Summary. The Relic Approach mission aligns with Lincoln's core strategic principles: force preservation, industrial escalation, economic blockade, and encirclement, culminating into a decisive unity of effort. By conserving units on the approach, rapidly developing supplies and power infrastructure, and seizing key objectives, such as destroying the Covenant base and rescuing trapped warthogs, you effectively blockade the enemy's capacity to fight. Finally, once your forces are maximized, a concentrated assault on the detonator mirrors Lincoln's application of overwhelming industrially backed pressure to force surrender. Mission objectives. The primary objectives of Relic Approach are to rebuild Alpha Base, establish supply infrastructure, train Marines, advance north through Covenant forces, enter the Forerunner structure, and destroy the detonator. Optional objectives include destroying the Covenant base for an economic blockade, eliminating 20 Jackal snipers, rescuing 2 trapped warthogs, and destroying the methane refinery. Lincoln's strategic doctrine: preservation of force. Lincoln prioritized the conservation of Union manpower and material, refusing to squander resources on frivolous engagements. Industrial escalation. He leveraged the North's industrial capacity to outproduce and outsupply Confederate forces on land and at sea, commissioning hundreds of ships for blockades and supporting munitions production, economic blockade, and encirclement. Lincoln implemented the Anaconda Plan, strangling the Confederacy through naval blockades and controlling rivers to fracture their logistics. He also repeatedly directed commanders to trap opposing armies by cutting off retreating routes, notably during Jackson's Valley Campaign and Lee's invasion. Delegation to trusted commanders. While Lincoln closely supervised overall strategy, he delegated operational command to proven generals like Grant and Sherman, ensuring unity of effort and swift execution, translating doctrine into Halo Wars strategy. Phase 1, secure and consolidate. Rebuild Alpha Base swiftly by constructing a supply pad and power generators to stabilize resource flow, mirroring Lincoln's focus on industrial capacity. Train 5 Marine squads early to clear shield generators and secure nearby vantage points without overextending, preserving your initial forces. Phase 2, economic strangulation. Upgrade the headquarters, Central Station, to Fortress, build 2 reactors, and fill the remaining slots with supply pads to maximize resource income, analogous to Lincoln's naval blockades crippling economic impact. Rescue the 2 trapped warthogs on the flanks, then integrate them into your strike force to bolster numbers without additional resource cost. Phase 3, encirclement and attrition of Covenant forces. Deploy a fleet of around 10 Grenadier upgraded warthogs to clear enemy infantry and sniper towers, using grenades to weaken grouped targets, replicating Lincoln's tactic of encircling and envelopment. Destroy the Covenant base as an optional objective, severing their ability to reinforce, akin to Lincoln's blockade severing Confederate supply lines. Phase 4, decisive unified assault. Once your economy is secure and your force is consolidated, mount a single overwhelming drive to the detonator. Use combined arms, Marines for anti-vehicle grenades on ghosts, and warthogs for heavy carnage to guarantee swift destruction. Maintain cohesion and avoid splitting units. This unified thrust reflects Lincoln's insistence on coordinated operations under trusted commanders. Conclusion. By aligning Lincoln's Civil War strategies, preservation, industrial supremacy, economic blockade, encirclement, and delegation, with the concrete objectives and unit mechanics of Relic Approach, President Lincoln, you ensure a minimal attrition, economically dominant, and decisively executed operation to complete the mission on legendary difficulty. That strategy is fine, but I preferred when it played along with the whole be my advisor thing, so this was the first and last time I did this. After building my base as the tutorial forces you to, I upgraded Marines and Warthogs since the Marines would serve to secure my base, and the Warthogs were to be my primary force to rescue the trapped Warthogs around the map, and then employ the Anaconda Plan by encircling and strangling the nearby Covenant base as to cut off reinforcements and supplies of the Covenant to the Forerunner structure. Well, on my first attempt, while attempting to consolidate resources and free those trapped Warthogs, my Warthog fleet decided to cut right across the map to get to the other side instead of going around, which got them all destroyed by the heavily fortified Covenant base. I tried to recover, but all I really ended up doing was provoking the Covenant into attacking my base with no means of defending myself, so I learned a valuable lesson, gave up, and started over. For round 2, I microed the fleet around this time, but I got lured into a frontal conflict without all the Warthog reinforcements, so I restarted again. This time, though I did engage with the enemy's defensive forces, I was able to take them out without directly engaging the enemy base, and while retaining a small number of my original fleet, including Forge. At that point, I replenished the fleet and freed the rest of the Warthogs that were trapped. With my Anaconda fully formed, it was time to constrict the Covenant base. I came at it through a couple of different angles, but ultimately what did it was attacking with my fleet from the west while keeping their defensive forces busy in the south. As my army quite literally enveloped their base, they wasted too many resources defending their exposed flank from my Warthog fleet and ceded too much ground to my frontal force of infantry, which allowed me to encircle and overwhelm the base, destroying it completely and cutting off the Covenant supply line. After that, I simply consolidated my army, moved my forces into the Forerunner structure, and destroyed the detonator in an overwhelming drive. Mission 3, Relic Interior, doesn't involve any base building, it's simply just a mission where you have to evacuate Anders and Forge from the Forerunner structure using grizzly tanks, so here's what I said to the advisor. Exemplary work, advisor. Now your president needs you to give me an Abraham Lincoln-themed strategy to complete the third mission, Relic Interior, on Legendary difficulty. Do you think you're up to the task, son? And this is how he responds. It is both an honor and a duty, President Lincoln. I stand ready to advise. Mission 3, Relic Interior, Legendary difficulty. A most fitting test of resolve, patience, and strategic wisdom that won a war and saved a union. Your forces are confined inside of a Forerunner relic, forced into narrow passages, ambushed at every turn. This is not a battle of brute strength, but of organization, discipline, and purpose. The very qualities you instilled in your commanders. The Lincoln Doctrine for Relic Interior. 1. Unity above all. As you once declared, a house divided against itself cannot stand. In this mission, you must keep your forces tightly grouped at all times. Fragmented forces will be ambushed and destroyed piecemeal, just as scattered Union detachments were cut down by Lee and Jackson. Your first order, sir, is to gather your strength and proceed as a single, disciplined column. Number 2, the economy of force. Lincoln, the master of strategic patience, knew how to conserve manpower for decisive engagements. You must avoid chasing retreating enemies, prioritize defending Sergeant Forge and Anders above all else, the lives of these officers are the mission's backbone, and let automated turrets and marines absorb fire first while Forge and Spartans apply their strength as needed. 3. Adaptation and delegation. You trusted your generals, Grant, Sherman, and Sheridan, to adapt to fluid battlefields. So too must you trust your unit combinations. Spartans serve as your Grant, the hammer, boarding enemy vehicles and turning them against their former masters. Forge is your Sherman, leading the charge where brute force is needed. Marines are your reliable Union Blue, holding the line, clearing enemies with grenades, garrisoning key points for defensive leverage. You, sir, must delegate duties appropriately and refrain from reckless action. 4. Defensive engineering, the Anaconda in microcosm. As with your famed Anaconda plan to blockade and squeeze the Confederacy, this mission demands a creeping advance. Establish turret defenses at every base opportunity, use those turrets to hold ground while slowly expanding your operational range, and clear rooms methodically and leave no Covenant survivors behind to regroup, the same way you sought to deny the South its ability to rebuild after every victory. 5. Overwhelming industrial support. If resources allow, upgrade and produce marines and turrets without pause. Your Union factories once churned out muskets, cannons, and railroads without rest. Maintain continuous unit production. If a marine squad falls, it is immediately replaced. If you lose a Warthog, build another. Victory is a machine of gears, not a flash of genius. In summary, Mr. President, proceed with discipline and unity, avoid wasteful skirmishes, trust your Spartans to seize enemy vehicles, turning the enemy's tools against them, secure and hold ground like a coiled snake, and build continuously until victory is inevitable, not merely possible. This is how the Union endured, Mr. President, and under your wise command, this is how humanity will endure against the Covenant. Shall I prepare for the next mission, sir? Now, there's a little rampancy here. I can't build any turrets and I don't have any Spartans. But since I have grizzly tanks, and there are literally tanks called Shermans in real life, Sergeant Forge can be my Grant, and my tanks can be my Sherman. Still though, even though I failed my first attempt due to taking too long while holding out on the energy bridge, the plan here was actually really solid. On my second attempt, I used my grizzlies to fight my way to Anderson Forge, and from there, I stuck to the economy of force and Anaconda in microcosm defensive engineering parts of the plan. I prioritized defending Anderson Forge, brute force most everything in our path with my Shermans, used my Marines as defensive leverage, and methodically moved at a creeping advance to clear enemies in my path, but to also outrun the reinforcements that chased us. Arcadia City had to have been one of the most difficult missions of the run, especially because Lincoln would be so adamant and unwavering about protecting as many civilians as possible, as they are the very foundation of the Union. I asked the advisor what strategy he cooked up for the mission, and here's what he said in reply. Arcadia City, Mr. President. A mission that stirs memories of your own early war struggles. The defense of Washington, the call to protect civilians, and the desperate need to hold the line against a superior invading force. The Covenant here act much like the Confederate raiders at the gates of the Capitol. Swift, brutal, and determined to break the will of the people. But as you taught us, the dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. Let us meet this storm as you would, with reason, resolve, and righteous steel. The Lincoln Doctrine for Arcadia City, Legendary Difficulty. Number 1. The Moral Imperative. Protect the innocent. Sir, you were always a leader who placed human dignity and life above all. In this mission, the evacuation of Arcadian civilians is the highest moral and strategic priority. Focus all your early maneuvers on escort duty, and use Warthogs and Spartans to screen civilian transports, circling ahead to eliminate ambushes and clearing a path rather than trailing behind. As in your own war, defending the people is not only good for the soul, but good for morale, and morale is the bedrock of victory. 2. Economy and industry first. Lincoln's war machine. The Union's factories, railroads, and shipyards gave you the strength to outlast your enemy. Likewise, secure supply crates early and often. Every crate is another musket, another ration, another soldier. Once the secondary base becomes available, establish supply pads first. No exceptions. Finally, follow with reactors only once your economy is stable. Build for strength, not flash. Number 3. Delegation to proven commanders. A wise man like yourself, sir, knew the value of trusting the right leaders. Spartans serve as your grant once again, boarding enemy vehicles to turn their own weapons against them. Forge plays the Sherman role, hitting flanks and disrupting the enemy advance, and Marines and Warthogs form the backbone of your blue coat line, holding ground and escorting civilians safely. No single unit wins this fight, Mr. President. It's the coordinated effort of many under clear command. 4. Defensive encirclement, the miniature Anaconda. You encircled the south with blockades and pressure, slowly tightening until surrender was the only option. Here, sir, you must establish a layered defense around civilian extractions. Use Warthogs for mobility and Spartans for shock force response. Also build turrets at the main and secondary bases as soon as resources allow. Your own version of coastal forts along the Potomac. 5. Overwhelming force, relentless pursuit. Once civilians are secured, you would waste no time, Mr. President, rallying your forces for a counterstrike. Focus on vehicle production at your secondary base. Scorpion tanks provide the iron fist to crush the Covenant struggle. Do not leave the Covenant time to regroup, as you never allowed the Confederacy time to rebuild its ranks after Gettysburg. Final counsel, Mr. President, this is a battle for hearts and minds, as well as ground. Show mercy to civilians, discipline to your troops, and unflinching resolve to the Covenant invaders. This mission is not about reckless glory, but about fulfilling your duty to the living. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. Let them remember that humanity stood tall, sir. When you're ready, I await your orders for Mission 5, Arcadia Outskirts. Now, this is a great plan in theory. There's a little rampancy since I can't build turrets to defend evac sites and I don't have any Spartans I can control. But on the whole, the idea of creating a mini Anaconda around the evacuating civilians, not to strangle them but to tightly defend them, is great. Also, the idea of using Warthogs is also brilliant since they have great mobility, low unit cost, and low resource cost, but the main problem is how long it takes to make them. Because of the moral imperative section of the plan, I overextended my existing resources, engaged in too many skirmishes, and got all of my relatively weak Warthogs killed off either right before I could construct my firebase or shortly thereafter, at which point all 3 evac ships would get destroyed while I tried to recover and amass my forces again. It also didn't help that I didn't know until the run was over that evac ship 3 blows up no matter what. Eventually I realized that I'd have to change my perspective on things. If I couldn't possibly save each civilian without overextending and failing the mission, I would have to simply focus on saving as many people as I could as effectively as possible, and the best way I thought to do that was by defending the shuttles. I lost Shuttle 1, but by amassing all of my forces at Shuttle 2, an army of some Marines and flamethrower troopers, as well as the Hornets I got at the beginning for free, but mostly consisted of my fleet of Warthogs, I was able to lock down Shuttle 2, withstand the last 5 minutes of brutal onslaught from the Covenant, and save over 100 Union souls. I moved on to Arcadia outskirts and asked the advisor what our plan for Mission 6 was, and here's what it said. A fine question, Mr. President, and one most fitting for a man of your strategic mind. Mission 5, Arcadia Outskirts, is a textbook exercise in what you so wisely championed during the war between the states. Turning the tide not with rash, impulsive charges, but with preparation, unity of effort, and the precise application of force at the time of your choosing. The Covenant strike like raiders on horseback, fast and relentless. But like the great campaigns you oversaw at Vicksburg and Petersburg, we shall bottle them, break their will, and press forward to victory. The Lincoln Doctrine for Arcadia Outskirts, Legendary Difficulty. 1. Establishing industry, the arsenal of democracy. You understood, Mr. President, that the war would not be won in the field, but in the factories. At the very moment your base is secured, focus first on economic infrastructure. Build supply pads and reactors in priority order. Also upgrade these pads quickly. Your forces are only as strong as your supply lines. Just as the Union could outproduce the Confederacy in rifles, cannons, and ironclads, so too must you maintain superior production over the Covenant. 2. Preservation of forces, no man wasted. As with the blood-soaked fields of Antietam and Gettysburg, you recognize the irreplaceable value of every soldier. Keep Warthogs mobile and evasive, never idle, and Marines should hold defensible high ground or garrisoned buildings, using cover to minimize casualties. This is not a mission for wasteful charges, it is for calculated, deliberate engagements where losses are few and meaningful. 3. Counter-raid doctrine, the Sheridan method. You trusted General Sheridan to harass Confederate supply and communication lines, using cavalry raids to weaken the enemy behind the front. In the same fashion, use Spartans and Warthogs to launch fast, decisive strikes on Covenant forward bases before they can consolidate power. Also board enemy vehicles with Spartans to turn the Covenant's own war machine against them, robbing them of their strength and bolstering your own. A true Lincolnian efficiency. 4. Entrenchment and fortification, the Union at Vicksburg. Before launching your decisive attack, you must fortify your position as you fortified Union supply lines along the Mississippi. Build turrets with anti-infantry and anti-vehicle upgrades at your base, and maintain a core force of upgraded Marines and Warthogs stationed defensively until your armored division, the Scorpions, can be produced. A fortified line cannot be broken, and a fortified president never falls. 5. Overwhelming force and unified command. When the time comes to crush the Covenant presence on Arcadia, you must follow the principle you pressed upon Grant and Sherman. Strike only when the enemy is weakened and you are overwhelmingly strong, and field a mixed force of Spartans, Scorpions, and Marines and strike their base with a single decisive push, leaving no time for them to rebuild. As you once said, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. This is the axe, sir. Final orders, Mr. President. Arcadia Outskirts will not be won with haste, but with heart and hard-won wisdom. Build a robust economy, preserve your troops, cripple their logistics with Spartan-led vehicle raids, and unleash your ironclad fist once you stand on the solid ground of preparation. The Union held against all odds, and so too will humanity under your steady hand. When you're ready for Mission 6 Light Dome, simply call on me, sir. I remain, as always, at your service. Overall, a good plan. Build up a solid infrastructure and economy, defend the base with upgraded Marines, use Warthogs for offense, and when I'm strong enough to take out the Covenant, I push their base with my Marines, my Warthogs, some Scorpions, and the Spartans I'm given towards the end of the mission. The biggest obstacle is the group of Covenant blocking us from reaching the firebase. We can't stop and fight them for too long because we're being chased, so it takes me a couple of attempts to break through and get a foothold, but when I do, things go much smoother. With constant waves of Covenant attacking, including powerful hunters and ghosts and wraiths, it was difficult to build up my Marine and Warthog army, but by having the Spartans I already currently have use the nearby cover, and by building and upgrading my Marines and Warthogs surely and consistently, I eventually generate a force that I'm able to mobilize to a nearby Covenant stronghold, which I reduce to looking like the blood-soaked fields of Antietam and Gettysburg. I then turn it into a new base closer to the Covenant's main fortress to act as a supply line like the one along the Mississippi for the siege of Vicksburg. It was at this point that I made a legion of Scorpions and obliterated the Covenant's forces as decisively as we trampled those filthy Confederate rats and won the war in Vicksburg. Dome of Light wasn't particularly difficult, but it was easily the longest mission of the run because I actually forgot about the Pelican transport thing, so I kept trying to guide each rhino to their position. The idea for the mission is to use these rhinos, these long-range artillery tanks, to breach a shield the Covenant has constructed, a Dome of Light if you will. You have to position 4 rhinos while each one and your base are under constant siege. I said to the advisor, "Your strategy worked flawlessly, advisor. Now, render unto me your brilliant tactical plan for Dome of Light." And he responded with, "Splendid news, Mr. President. It warms this old soldier's heart to see your campaign unfold as smoothly as the Mississippi flows. Now, we arrive at Mission 6, Dome of Light. A task that calls for the same mix of moral courage and cold calculation you used to steer the Union through the fires of secession. The Covenant Shield Dome is no different from the stubborn fortresses and ironclad entrenchments you once ordered Grant and Sherman to dismantle. It stands tall, proud, and seemingly invulnerable, but all things can be unmade by patience, industry, and the right application of force. The Lincoln Doctrine for Dome of Light, Legendary Difficulty. 1. Logistics, the lifeblood of victory. You well knew, Mr. President, that no campaign can endure without a deep and reliable supply line. Establish a strong economy immediately by building and upgrading supply pads before all else. Once the basics are secured, construct reactors to unlock advanced units. Always maintain a balance between building units and expanding infrastructure. Even in war, industry must not sleep. This will be the engine that allows your army to endure the protracted siege against the Covenant Dome. 2. Combined Arms, the Grand Army Philosophy. Your philosophy of uniting varied forces into one cohesive army applies here perfectly. The Covenant are strong, but they do not understand human cooperation as you do. Assemble a balanced strike force. Spartans for boarding and skirmishing, Marines for flexible defense and support, Scorpion tanks for brute firepower, and Warthogs for scouting and harassment. Just as you unified the North under a single banner, unify your military assets into an ironclad spearhead. 3. Siege Warfare, the Vicksburg model. You favored siege and strangulation over costly frontal assaults, and this mission is no exception. Secure and fortify every forward base opportunity with turrets upgraded for anti-vehicle and anti-air coverage. Hold positions and repel Covenant counterattacks until your forces are massed and upgraded. Only then, march against the shield generators methodically, one at a time, in a disciplined and relentless sequence. A premature assault is the folly of lesser men, but patience wins the war. 4. Targeted sabotage, Sheridan's playbook. Much as you directed General Sheridan to cut out the heart of the Confederates' infrastructure, here you must focus. Prioritize shield generators over Covenant troops. Let no distractions tempt you from this goal. Once the generators are down, the enemy's technological advantage is erased. Used Spartans to steal enemy vehicles and turn their strength to your cause. The surest way to end a battle is to take away the enemy's means to fight it. 5. Final Assault, the Gettysburg Principle. Once the enemy is exposed, act with the decisiveness you demanded at Gettysburg. Lead your Scorpion Spartans and Marines in a full-strength assault on the exposed Covenant base. Keep your forces together. As you once warned, a house divided cannot stand. When the final blow comes, it should be swift, overwhelming, and absolute. Final counsel, Mr. President. Dome of Light is a battle of patience and precision, the Union's most cherished strength under your command. Secure your industry, assemble a balanced army, dismantle the enemy's shields with care, and strike only when the odds are fully in your favor. That, Mr. President, is the American way, and the Lincoln way. When you're prepared to press on, I await your word to begin planning Mission 7, Scarab. A challenge worthy of your genius, sir. So, using the Grand Army philosophy here, my forces for this mission would be comprised of the Spartans I start with, Alice with a minigun, Douglas with a rocket launcher, and Jerome with an incredibly powerful Spartan laser with amazing range, Marines for defense and support since they're easy to build up and replace, Scorpions for firepower, and Warthogs as my speedy glass cannons. Getting the first Rhino into place was easy enough since it's right next to your base, but the idea was to secure and fortify each Rhino using Lincoln's model of the Siege of Vicksburg, and for a while, it actually worked. My base had anti-vehicle and anti-air turrets. Captain Cutter was deploying ODSTs to guard the first and second Rhino when they deployed, but after getting the third Rhino into place, it started becoming exceedingly difficult to hold our positions and repel the Covenant's counterattacks. We were spread too thin, and their offensive pushes only got stronger and stronger. That only made it even harder to use Sheridan's tactics and focus on getting the Rhinos into position, since I had to defend 3 Rhinos and my base, while also breaking through the defensive blockade the Covenant had set up at strategic locations for the Rhinos. Ultimately, the only way I was able to win was by leading a full-strength assault against the Locusts and Wraiths bundled up at position 5, pulling all units to take them out. Many times I had to reload a prior save because my base fell under attack and was gonna be destroyed when I pulled all my units away, but eventually I was successful. I timed it so that I repelled an invasion, trained more units when my offensive units were destroyed, units that would spawn at base and defend it, and I was able to clear position 5, which then allowed me to Pelican a Rhino to the last position, expose the Covenant's bases behind the dome, and Mac blast them all to dust. It may have taken 3 hours and 15 minutes in all, but to quote myself speaking to the advisor, that truly was incredibly challenging, advisor. It tested the limits of my will, but with enough grit and determination, the Union has prevailed. Now, what do you have for me next, advisor? What for Mission 7, Scarab? As ready to move on to the next mission as I was, the advisor said, "Mr. President, I salute you. Your triumph over the Covenant Shield Dome was the very image of Union tenacity. History will record that you faced overwhelming odds and, as always, answered with iron resolve. Now we turn to Mission 7, Scarab, a new and fearsome adversary. A walking war machine, towering and seemingly indestructible. It reminds me, sir, of the ironclads that once threatened to break your blockade, or the mighty forts that lined the Mississippi. The Scarab is no different. A behemoth built on brute force and arrogance. But like the Confederacy's fortresses, it too can fall. Let me present your Lincoln Doctrine for Mission 7, Scarab. Legendary difficulty. 1. Understand the threat. The enemy's pride is his weakness. You always believed in learning the mind of your enemy, Mr. President, and the Scarab is no different. It is powerful, but it relies on fixed supply lines and an overconfidence in its invulnerability. Study its patrol routes, movements, and blind spots. Never meet the Scarab head-on. Patience is your sharpest weapon. As you once said, I walk slowly, but I never walk backwards. Let the Covenant move rashly. You will move wisely. 2. Economy of war. The Union industrial spirit. As with every campaign under your leadership, the first order of business is securing the backbone of your war effort. Prioritize supply pads and reactors at both your starting base and any forward bases you can secure. Upgrade your supply pads to ensure a consistent stream of resources. Even under the shadow of the Scarab, industry must continue. You cannot fight with empty hands. 3. Defense before offense. Fortify like the Mississippi line. Before you think of striking at the Covenant's war machine, you must first ensure the Union's positions are unshakable. Construct and upgrade turrets at all bases, using anti-vehicle and anti-air loadouts. Station Spartans and Warthogs as a mobile response force to fend off Covenant raids while you prepare. A fortress that does not fall gives the commander the time to win the war. 4. Guerrilla warfare, the Shenandoah strategy. When fighting a superior foe, you once directed your commanders to harass, disrupt, and bleed the enemy slowly, rather than seeking decisive battle too soon. Use Spartans to hijack Covenant vehicles and turn them against their masters. Deploy Warthogs for hit-and-run raids on the Covenant's power nodes and supply routes, crippling the Scarab's support network. And use Marines in garrisoned positions to provide overwatch and hold ground. You need not face the Scarab directly to weaken it. Let the war of attrition begin. 5. Target the Scarab's lifeblood. Cut off its limbs. As in Vicksburg, you understood the key to victory was to strangle the lifelines. Here, the Scarab is sustained by power nodes scattered across the map. Assign dedicated squads to locate and destroy each node systematically, and keep a mobile defense force to shield these teams from Covenant counterattacks. Every node you destroy is one more link severed to the Scarab's mighty chain. 6. The Killing Blow. Gettysburg Decisiveness. Once the Scarab is weakened and exposed, Mr. President, the time will come for a decisive assault, as you ordered at Gettysburg when the moment was ripe. Use Spartans in captured vehicles and Scorpion tanks to deliver a concentrated strike to the Scarab's weak points once it is vulnerable. Don't scatter your forces, a unified army is an unstoppable force, and strike swift, strike hard, and don't stop until the monster falls. Final counsel, Mr. President, the Scarab is not just a machine, but a symbol of Covenant overconfidence. And as you've proven time and again, no fortress is too mighty for the will of a free people. Patience, industry, and precision will win the day. Just as you wore down the Confederacy, you will bring this creature low. Should you stand victorious, sir, as I know you will, summon me for the planning of Mission 8, Anders Signal. I await your orders with pride. The last mission was a pain in the ass that took so many retries that there was a while there where I considered restarting entirely because I thought that I had saved at a point where the mission had become unwinnable, but Mission 7, Scarab, is easily one of my favorite missions in the game. You're being attacked by this massive Halo 2 Scarab, but it's incomplete and can't move, and your base is being protected by some temple ruins. You basically have all the resources in the world to build up your base, and you have roughly 23 to 24 minutes to destroy the Scarab before it starts drilling through your cover with its I-beam and blows up your base. It's the closest thing this game has to a boss fight, and I love it. Now on my initial playthrough on Easy, I just built up an army and brute forced it, but playing on Legendary, and doing so as Abraham Lincoln, calls for strategy, for a little tact. I didn't even know about the nodes in my first run, but the advisor informed me of 7 nodes across the map that I could destroy to slow down the Scarab's I-beam that sweeps the map looking for targets to melt like butter. Like the advisor said, the key to this whole operation is timing my attacks to the Scarab's sweeping beam. I built up supply pads and reactors ASAP for my Union industry, and then I constructed and upgraded turrets and stationed my starting units and some warthogs to defend my base from the waves of enemies that would attack occasionally. It was difficult to find a balance between funding defense, like turrets, turret upgrades, warthogs, and warthog upgrades, while also trying to fund my offensive, which was going to be my defensive warthogs after I was able to slowly replace them with an army of marines to provide overwatch and hold our ground. But I imagine Lincoln's own struggles against the incursions of the enemy foreign nation of the Confederacy were much the same. Never lose territory to the traitor scum, but also don't allow their harmful disobedience to persist. Then came the guerrilla warfare tactics used in the Shenandoah strategy. I used these tactics to locate and systematically destroy the lifeblood of the Scarab's offense, its mobility nodes, just like how Lincoln strangled the Confederates' lifelines during the siege of Vicksburg. The main problem was that my warthogs were weak glass cannons, so since I'd need the concentrated firepower of some Scorpions later for our decisive Gettysburg killing blow against the Scarab, I decided to first deploy the Scarabs as a mobile defense force to protect my warthogs from Covenant counterattacks while they dispatched the nodes. With a unified army and tactical use of the Mac Blast when needed, our assault was unstoppable and we destroyed all the nodes with plenty of time to spare. Then we struck swift and hard against the Scarab. Even with Gosshogs and Canister Shell Scorpions, our damage wasn't nearly enough to bring the monster down before I could annihilate the Union, but I used the mobility of one of my Warthogs to distract it, driving back and forth in front of its beam until we brought this weapon low, just as we brought the Confederacy to heel. Next is Mission 8, Anders Signal. Here's what I had to say to my advisor about both the previous and upcoming missions. Excellently done, advisor. In my first attempt I wasted too many resources and too much time on upgrading and training defensive marines, but when I instead focused on using warthogs for a speedy offense against the nodes, and scorpions as both the mobile defense force for the warthogs and the hammer to strike down on the Scarab while it was weak, with a bit of maneuvering and a bit of help from Captain Cutter's Mac Blast, I was able to bring down the Scarab before it had a chance to bring my base to ruin. What stroke of brilliance have you for me on the subject of Anders Signal? My advisor replied, that, Mr. President, is the finest sort of field report. Clear evidence that the Union spirit remains unshaken under your command. You identified waste, adapted your strategy, and applied force with the efficiency of Grant at Vicksburg. I could not be prouder to serve as your advisor. Now we move on to Mission 8, Anders Signal. And if the Scarab was brute strength, this mission is all about that other fine tool of warfare you hold dear: swift, intelligent rescue and moral duty. Anders is trapped, and your heart, sir, ever compassionate, will not allow a soldier to be left behind. This mission is an escort and extraction operation wrapped into a Covenant meat grinder. So allow me to present the Lincoln Doctrine for Mission 8, Anders Signal, Legendary Difficulty. 1. Duty to the individual. Emancipation mindset. Mr. President, your policy was clear. Every soul matters. Anders is an asset not only of strategy, but of human worth. Abandoning her is unthinkable. This mission's entire goal is built around her safe retrieval, meaning you must be precise, deliberate, and unflinching in your commitment to her extraction. 2. Fast, mobile, and decisive. The cavalry model. You know, sir, the Union Army often relied on cavalry raids to sweep past the main enemy body and strike at the heart of a problem before reinforcements could react. From the outset, lean heavily on warthogs for scouting, flanking, and early skirmishes. Keep your forces light, mobile, and ready to respond to attacks from multiple directions. Static defense here is a fool's game. This mission is not about building a fortress, but about mastering the art of maneuver warfare. 3. Economy of scale. Minimalist over waste. As you learned through the Union's wartime economy, building for function, not show, is key. Focus your resources early on a lean product line. Supply pads, reactors for vehicle production, vehicle depot for Scorpions, barrack only if you want Spartans for boarding enemy armor, which can be useful but not essential. Avoid overbuilding Marines or static defenses. Speed is your true shield. 4. Break the siege, divide and conquer. The Covenant will attempt to box you in with raids and skirmishes at your base. Use Scorpions and Warthogs to smash these probing attacks early, giving you breathing room to assemble an offensive strike force. Once the perimeter is stable, commit to the primary objective: escort and extract Anders. Send Warthogs ahead to scout the safest route, clearing out Covenant patrols and mines before your main forces advance. 5. Escort strategy. Sherman's March revisited. When Sherman marched to the sea, his forces cut through Confederate supply lines, moving fast and leaving no opportunity for encirclement. Apply the same here. Keep Anders' convoy under constant armored guard, with Scorpions leading and Warthogs flanking. Be ready to fall back temporarily rather than overextend. Preserve Anders at all cost, even if it means sacrificing units. Use Mac Blast wisely to clear large Covenant clusters blocking the convoy's path, especially when brutes or hunters block the way. 6. Final extraction, the final act of mercy. Once the convoy nears the landing zone, expect the Covenant to throw everything at you. This is their last, desperate bid. The Confederate high tide. Consolidate your forces before the final push. Strike the Covenant hard and fast, delay is death here. Use Mac Blast or any captured enemy vehicles to create a gap in their defenses. And once Anders is clear, the mission is complete and the Union's honor remains untarnished. Final counsel, Mr. President. This mission is not a siege, not an industrial slugfest, it is a rescue. And as you yourself declared, the dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. Act boldly, act swiftly, and bring your soldier home. When you stand ready, Mr. President, I'll await your command to prepare for Mission 9, the Flood. It'll require all the wisdom and resolve you have cultivated thus far. I stand ready, sir. Now, of course, none of that makes any sense because we're starting with only an elephant, so we don't even have a working strategy for the first half of the mission. So I said, "Advisor, I seem to misunderstand your strategy. Forgive me, but I'd not be prudent if I didn't point out that this mission starts with my only having an elephant to deploy from, meaning all I have available to start are Marines and flamethrower infantry. How should I proceed?" And at that point, my advisor replies with this: "Excellent observation, Mr. President. You honor me by keeping your wits sharp. Such vigilance is the hallmark of your leadership, and I am all the better for serving an executive who demands precision. You are absolutely right. The opening of Mission 8 Anders Signal places you not in the comfort of a fortified Union depot, but deep in hostile territory with nothing but a mobile elephant and basic infantry. This, sir, calls for what you might call a frontier campaign, the kind of war your early generals waged before factories and railroads, where foot soldiers, fieldcraft, and cunning were the only tools at hand. Allow me to revise the plan. the true Lincoln Field strategy for Anders' Signal, phase by phase. Phase 1, Frontier Phase, Infantry and Mobility. At the outset, your only strength lies in basic human soldiers, Marines for ranged combat, and flamethrowers for close quarters, especially effective against Covenant swarming grunts and jackals. This early phase is about survival and maneuver, not conquest. Keep the elephant moving, but only as far as you've scouted with the Marines first. The elephant is your lifeline. To lose it is to lose the campaign. Garrison every structure you encounter with your Marines to gain cover fire and map control. These positions serve as makeshift strongholds until better units are produced. Use flamethrowers for clearing Covenant forces that attempt to rush your elephant or occupy defensible positions ahead. As you once advised about America's early trials, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. Do not rush, Mr. President. Sharpen your position. Phase 2, Industrial Buildup. Securing a real base. As you progress, your priority is to locate the site for a proper fire base as soon as one becomes available. Once built, switch immediately into Union Industry mode. 1. Supply pads first, reactors second. 2. Once you have the economy, produce warthogs for mobility. And 3. Upgrade your infantry with new blood for squad size, and grenades for ranged punch. Flamethrowers should be held for anti-infantry work inside tight spaces. The early fight is a hard march through wilderness and enemy lines, but this base is your turning point, like the railheads at Chattanooga or the shipyards of the Mississippi. Once secured, the Covenant's advantage begins to fade. Phase 3, Cavalry rescues the infantry. Once your economy is stable, shift production away from static troops towards Warthogs and later Scorpions once your reactors allow. Use Warthogs to flank and scout, use Scorpions as the anvil that shields Anders and breaks the Covenant's assaults, and always maintain a combined force. As you taught us, a house divided cannot stand, and an army divided will fall. The Covenant will throw multiple attacks your way once Anders is rescued. Having mobile armor ensures you can keep pace and protect your convoy to the landing zone. Phase 4, Mac Blast and Hammer of the Union. Save your Mac Blast for 2 critical scenarios. 1, when Anders' convoy is blocked by a powerful Covenant force, usually hunters, brutes, or turrets. Or when troops risk being overwhelmed at choke points during the convoy escort. The Mac Blast is your ironclad monitor on the battlefield, the same way naval artillery covered Sherman on his march. Use it when the battle must turn decisively in your favor. The spirit of the mission. This mission, Mr. President, is the very image of your leadership. A tale of humble beginnings, iron determination, and selfless rescue. You once said, "The better part of one's life consists of his friendships." Rescuing Anders is not only a tactical victory, it is a moral obligation, an act of Union loyalty. Closing words, adapt to the situation as you did with the Scarab. Begin as the frontier fighter, evolve into the industrial commander, and end as the Union hammer that crushes all in its path. When Anders is safely aboard, sir, summon me, and I'll lay the groundwork for Mission 9, The Flood, a battle unlike any that we've faced thus far. I await your word, Mr. President. Alright, now I've got an actionable plan. I start by drumming up some Marines and flamethrower soldiers, and I hold out against the Brute Army until Red Team is deployed as my backup. With the Brutes cleared out, I mobilize my elephant, and we locate the lost elephant, but it's being attacked by the Flood, so I rescue some nearby ODST, and then I use my forces, primarily Red Team, to clear out the Flood and rescue the elephant. With that done, I'm finally able to construct a forward operations base and begin the base building section of the mission. As instructed by my advisor, I build some supply pads and reactors, start producing warthogs, and start upgrading my Marines. Base building isn't too bad, I occasionally get attacked by some Floods and some powerful brutes, but my heroes and foot soldiers handle them fairly easily. With an entire armada of warthogs built and ready to go, I very easily cut through the remaining Flood and rescue the last elephant, not even needing to enact the next part of the plan where I would have started introducing Scorpions into my attack force as well. I said to my advisor, "Well done. This new enemy, the Flood, was summarily crushed. I would now like to hear what Abraham Lincoln tactic you have for me to win Mission 9. And my advisor said, Mr. President, I salute your unwavering resolve. The Flood, a foe as relentless and mindless as war itself, has been driven back under your command, and I dare say your performance would earn the admiration of General Grant himself. Now, on to the next trial. Mission 9, The Flood. What would Abraham Lincoln do strategy? Mr. President, this mission is the very embodiment of your famous belief. The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The Covenant were once your clear enemy, but this parasite is a threat to all life. Against such a foe, the Union must adapt, unify, and strike hard. 1. Principle of the Grand Coalition: unity over division. In the past, you fought the Covenant with the clear mind of a patriot defending liberty against tyranny. Now, sir, you must embrace a more flexible, diplomatic approach. The Flood makes no distinction between blue or red, alien or human, and neither must your strategy. Throughout this mission, you'll find temporary ceasefires and common interests arising between the UNSC and Covenant forces, much like your masterful handling of political factions during the war. Exploit this to your advantage. Focus on the Flood, not petty skirmishes with the Covenant, until the immediate threat is crushed. 2. Economy of resources, supply before glory. As always, your first priority is a strong economic base. Build supply pads and reactors first and foremost. Skip excessive early unit production and let your starting forces do the scouting and defense. If you cannot pay your troops, you cannot win the war. And so the old Union war machine must churn before the fight begins in earnest. 3. Industrial might, fire and steel. The Flood's strength lies in its numbers and infection. Your counter is simple: Scorpions and flamethrowers. Scorpions are the ironclads of this battlefield, shrugging off the Flood's biological onslaught and offering heavy firepower at range. Flamethrowers are specialized to halt the Flood's swarming attacks, especially in tight corridors or choke points. Build them in moderate number and garrison them in structures whenever possible. Use warthogs for fast response and scouting, but replace them as soon as your Scorpion fleet is large enough. The Flood has no economy, only brute replication, so you must produce faster than it can devour. 4. Total War Doctrine grants hard war translated to Halo. The Flood is an enemy that cannot be reasoned with. Much like Grant's approach in the final campaigns of the Civil War, this mission is about relentless offense rather than static defense. Do not turtle. Any delay allows the Flood to grow. Push aggressively once your force consists of 6 to 8 Scorpions and fully upgraded infantry. Use Mac Blast only when your entire advance risks being stalled by large clusters of Flood biomass or infected vehicles. This is not a battle to hold ground, it's a battle to purge. 5. Moral Resolve: the righteous cause. Finally, Mr. President, never lose sight of the human cost. The Flood is a dark mirror of the chaos you sought to end in the Emancipation Proclamation. It represents the destruction of identity, freedom, and hope. Your orders must be swift, decisive, and guided by duty, not vengeance. Leave no room for the parasite to spread, and do not shy from sacrificing machinery if it saves human lives. Closing counsel. As you once proclaimed, the struggles of today is not altogether for today, it is for a vast future also. This mission isn't just about the present battle, but the survival of all life. Fight with the understanding that your every move shapes the outcome of not only this world, but the next. Once the Flood is purged, I will await your orders for Mission 10, Shield World, where the fate of Anders and the future of the war will once again demand your wisdom. At your service, Mr. President. Well, I can't exactly negotiate with the Covenant, but I can let them and the Flood just kill each other first. Speaking of the Flood, that's our current mission, with our objective simply being to rescue Red Team and take out the Flood base. I already have some supply pads in place, but as our economy plan suggests, I build some more supply pads and some reactors while foregoing early unit production to focus my resources into building and upgrading the fire and steel of the Union's industrial might. Warthogs for early mobilization and offense, flamethrowers because they specialize in cooking Flood, and Scorpions to be our ironclads. To avoid turtling, as soon as I had the 6 to 8 Scorpions in my army, and my units were at maximum capacity with them, the Warthogs and the flamethrowers, we made our aggressive push. We were playing by General Grant's hard war playbook. Static defense against the onslaught of the Flood is useless, so since a battle of attrition is a battle lost, we stuck to relentless offense. I was informed that we could destroy the surrounding colonies to weaken the main Flood base, a proto-Gravemind, but I instead stuck to the mission plan and sent my troops full throttle right into the heart of the enemy. Their Flood launchers were formidable, but in the end, they didn't stand a chance. On to Mission 10, Shield World. I of course asked my advisor for guidance. Alright then, good sir. Mission 9 completed easily and with flying colors. Give me the Lincoln plan for Mission 10. This is what my advisor cooked up. Mr. President, splendid news, and a testament to your steady hand and iron will. With the floods scattered like chaff before the Union wind, we now stand on the precipice of a new frontier. Mission 10, Shield World. A world not made by God or nature, but by the ancients, and holding secrets that could unmake everything we've fought for. This is no longer a simple war of guns and ground, sir. It's a war of destiny. Now then, allow me to lay before you the Lincoln Doctrine for Shield World. Mission 10 Shield World. The Lincoln Strategy. Phase 1. The strategic premise. Preserve the Union by saving Anders. The goal here is not destruction for destruction's sake, Mr. President, but the preservation of one of our finest scientific minds, Professor Anders. As you yourself believe during the War for the Union, the dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. Anders is the key to future victories, and her survival ensures the war is won beyond this battle. Every decision you make in this mission must bend to that end. Rescue the future. Phase 2. Early strategy, expansion, and industrial prowess. You begin with a base, but enemy pressure will mount swiftly. The Union won the Civil War not just on the battlefield, but through factories, railroads, and supply lines. You must embrace that same principle. First, establish 2 supply pads immediately, then construct a reactor to unlock vital upgrades. Third, secure the secondary base to the north as soon as you have the forces to spare. The Shield World is unfamiliar terrain, but the old rule holds. This side with more industry will outlast any foe. Like the Transcontinental Railroad, your bases must link strength with speed. Spread wide, build fast, and prepare for the storm. Phase 3, unit composition, combined arms, and unity of purpose. You taught us, Mr. President, that unity, not division, is the foundation of victory. Your army must reflect this wisdom. Marines with grenades for flexible skirmishing, Warthogs for mobility and scouting, Scorpions as your heavy shock force to crush the Covenant's ground units, and Wolverines for air defense as the Covenant are fond of Banshees and you'll need an answer. When you command, remember your own words. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Neither can an army lacking proper combined arms. The Shield World will test your readiness from all sides, so prepare a balanced force. Phase 4. Offensive Doctrine grants relentless advance. General Grant taught the Union to press the attack, never allow the enemy time to regroup or recover. Apply this same iron logic. Use Scorpions and Warthogs to aggressively clear out Covenant positions while always reinforcing your army from your dual bases. When a firebase falls under attack, don't retreat and panic. Rebuild it, fortify it, and send reinforcements. The Union's strength lies not in avoiding losses, but in the sheer determination to replace and overcome them. Mag Blast should be used to clear entrenched enemy positions blocking Anders' escape path, or to break the Covenant's most dangerous assault groups. Phase 5, Moral Purpose, the Long View. You are not merely fighting for survival, Mr. President, but for the soul of civilization. The Forerunner relics and Anders' research are the tools of tomorrow's peace. Protecting her is no mere mission. It is your Gettysburg Address made manifest. When the fight grows dark and the odds seem long, recall your own counsel. The best way to predict your future is to create it. That future cannot be built if Anders falls into enemy hands. This mission is a declaration not of war, but of hope. Conclusion, the emancipation of Anders. So the plan, sir, is simple in principle but ironclad in execution. Secure your economy, maintain a balanced army, press the attack like Grant at Vicksburg, and focus your every action on rescuing Anders, not chasing glory. Once the mission is complete and Anders is back aboard the Spirit of Fire, I will stand ready, cap in hand, awaiting your next command for Mission 11, Cleansing, where fire and steel will be the final arbiters. At your service, Mr. President. This mission is actually pretty rough. I executed the plan pretty one-to-one, but it takes too long to get off the ground since I didn't realize that I'd have to be so careful with my time, being that I'm on a timer. So in my first attempt I actually ended up soft-locking myself and having to restart entirely. For my successful attempt, I immediately sent my pre-existing Scorpions north to help Alpha Squad for 2 reasons. First, that's the third objective of the first phase of the plan after building my infrastructure, but why wait when I already have the firepower? And 2, if I successfully defend them, I'll be rewarded with a grizzly to add to my forces for free. I then build my supply pads and reactors, and then send some troops to garrison a nearby reactor thingy. Then I start building my forces, which would consist of Marines for burst damage and support, Warthogs for damage and mobility, Scorpions for raw power, and Wolverines for Covenant Banshees, even though none appear in this mission. After spamming heals on my Scorpions, protecting Alpha Squad while building up my forces, I finally used a cryobomb on the Flood at the Alpha evac site, destroyed the Flood there, and was rewarded the Grizzly for my efforts. I took the second and third evac sites too sloppily the first attempt, and ended up getting slaughtered by Flood juggernauts and then barely running out of time, but on my next go, I macroed efficiently enough and was able to use my forces to overwhelm the Flood at Bravo site, saving Bravo Squad and being rewarded an elephant. And with most of my army still intact and in good health, we just stormed Charlie site, cleared it out with everything we had, and then evac'd Charlie team back to the base, completing the mission. Moving on to the next mission, Cleansing. We're flying the Spirit of Fire through the Shield World, and Flood keep attaching themselves to our ship, and we gotta get rid of them while protecting our airlocks. Thankfully, the Shield World has a barrier that cooks the Flood off of our ship, but only if they're dead or nearly dead when it hits them, and the beam cooks us too, so we have to kill all the Flood and let the beam destroy them before it destroys us. I say to my advisor, outstanding work, advisor. Now, we must advance our war front to Cleansing. What Abraham Lincoln plan do you advise? And my advisor says, Mr. President, we now come to Mission 11, Cleansing, a battle most grim. Our charge is no longer a mere skirmish over ground or territory, but a campaign of total eradication against the parasite. You stand, as you once did at Gettysburg, tasked with ensuring that those who died here shall not have died in vain. The Flood has burrowed into the very core of the Shield World, corrupting its heart, and it's the solemn duty of the Union to burn it out, root and stem. Permit me now, sir, to deliver unto you the Lincoln Doctrine for Mission 11, Cleansing. Mission 11, Cleansing. The Abraham Lincoln Strategy. First, strategic framing. This is a war of survival, not retaliation. You once said, we shall nobly save, or meaningly lose, the last best hope of Earth. This mission embodies that struggle. The Flood cannot be bargained with. It cannot be deterred. The mission is clear. Escort and defend the cleansing beam of the Spirit of Fire as it scours the infestation from within. This is the march to the sea, Mr. President. Not for conquest, but for liberation. 2. Opening Doctrine. Supply, industry, and fire. You are given a fully operational base in the cleansing beam, which will rotate counterclockwise around the Shield World's interior, destroying the Flood's growth. But the parasite will resist, ferociously. Your base is your rail yard, your ironworks, your arsenal of democracy. Fortify it thus. First double supply pads and reactors, then vehicle depot for early Scorpions, then barracks for flame marines and upgrades, and finally field armory, if possible, to secure extra turrets and population cap upgrades. Build as Lincoln built the Union war machine. Slow to start, but unstoppable once in motion. 3. Main force composition. The hammer of the Republic. The Flood is immune to reason, but vulnerable to fire and steel. Your army must be Scorpions, core force, tanky, reliable, and strong against all threats, flamethrowers, in groups of 4 to 6 for close-range Flood suppression, Wolverines, keep 2 to 3 on standby for uninfected flyers, Marines with grenades, versatile support, excellent at taking down Flood growths and pod clusters, and optionally Hornets for mobile support once your economy stabilizes. Do not spread thin. Escort the cleansing beam with overwhelming strength, not trickles of troops. 4. Escort tactics. The doctrine of total commitment. Each segment of the Shield World has Flood bases, growth pods, and ambushes that will attempt to halt the cleansing beam. You must march with it, like Sherman through Georgia, torching every last vestige of resistance. Destroy all Flood bases as you rotate clockwise, send Scorpions ahead to scout and clear paths while the beam moves, keep flamethrowers and marines near the cleansing beam to counter sudden infestations that spring up, and use the cleansing beam's firepower as a weapon. Lead Flood masses into its arc for bonus destruction. When attacked from multiple sides, do not panic, rally, defend the core, and press on. 5. Special Council. The Mac Blast Emancipation. Reserve the Mac Blast for moments of strategic necessity. Flood base clusters, reinforcement spores, defending your base if a Flood wave breaks through. Each use should have a clear, union-preserving purpose, just as your great proclamations always served a higher cause. 6. Victory through vigilance. Stay ever aware of Floods ambushing behind the beam, make sure to leave a unit or 2 to watch your flanks, infested vehicles, eliminate them before they infect your Scorpions, and pod clusters spawning behind you, clean as you go. Let no corruption fester in your wake. As you once said, let us have faith that right makes might, and in that faith, let us to the end dare to do our duty. Conclusion: burn the rot, preserve the future. This mission, Mr. President, is not won through brilliance of arms alone, but persistence, coordination, and purpose. Escort the cleansing beam like a funeral procession for the Flood, until not a trace remains. With the mission complete, you will be poised to finish the war on your own terms. When you're ready, I shall prepare the final strategy for Mission 12, Repairs, where the Union's final stand upon the Shield world begins. Until then, I remain, as ever, your loyal advisor in war and wisdom. Now, some of that is useless because I can't build anything here, but I know that, like last time, the hammer of our Republic will be Scorpions, Flamethrowers, Marines, Wolverines, and even Hornets if I really need them. Now, my advisor thinks that the Cleansing Ring is some kind of beam structure on the map that I can send Marines and Flamethrowers to, so I instead just use my Marines and Flamethrowers to defend my airlocks while my Scorpions and Hornets start to clear the Flood pods off the deck in a clockwise rotation. Unfortunately, I forgot that the pods can come back to life, so I started over, and this time I left some units to take out the pods again should it regenerate. This time, I used Hornets better to clear the hull of the ship, and after a couple passes of the ring, we were free and clear. The next mission, Repairs, was an absolute joke. First, I said to my advisor, "Oh, loyal advisor, you've yet to fail me with your brilliance, but now a true test of your Abraham Lincoln tactics. Repairs." He said, "Mr. President, this is the hour that tests the very soul of the Union. Mission 12 Repairs is no mere engagement, it is a siege upon your legacy. The Covenant seeks to prevent the Spirit of Fire from escaping this ancient tomb, and if they succeed, all that we've sacrificed shall be for naught. Like the defenders of Fort Stevens, we must hold fast, not for territory, not for glory, but for the very preservation of our great endeavor. And so I present to you, with humility and solemn duty, the Lincoln strategy for Mission 12, Repairs. Mission 12, Repairs. The Iron Shield of the Union. First, the great objective. Hold the line until the engines ignite. The fiery trail through which we pass will light us down in honor or in dishonor to the latest generation. The Covenant assault is relentless. They will not stop. Your mission is to hold out until the Spirit of Fire's FTL core is reassembled. A time-bound defense of our last and greatest hope. This is our siege of Vicksburg in reverse. We are the ones being surrounded, and so we must make our position into a fortress, a Gettysburg of metal and willpower. Second, initial action. Fortify the Republic's heart. You begin with access to 2 bases and limited troops. Start by establishing supply lines. First double supply pads on each base, then 2 reactors or upgrade one quickly, then a vehicle depot and barracks for combined arms, and finally a field armory for turret upgrades and population increase. Upgrade your turrets to anti-vehicle and anti-air early. Set them to guard choke points, not random ground. Every turret is a sentry at the gates of Union liberty. 3. Force composition. An army not of numbers, but of purpose. A divided army is a defeated army. Your forces must represent the unity of the Union. Scorpions to maintain the battle line, durable and strong. Flamethrowers, especially vital to eliminating Flood and infantry charges. Marines with grenades, versatile fillers and good base defenders. Wolverines, make sure to maintain 2 to 3 for Banshee threat. And optional Hornets for rapid response and path interception. Keep 2 squads stationed at each base for fast reinforcements. The rest should rotate between defending the power core generators and intercepting incoming waves. 4. Defensive doctrine, building high the ramparts. The Covenant will send waves of wraiths, ghosts, banshees, and infantry, targeting both your bases and the 3 power core installations. You must become an impenetrable wall. First, station units near generators. Scorpions and Marines are preferred. Then upgrade turrets to suit your threats. Anti-air near the Spirit of Fire, anti-vehicle near the generators. Last, use Mac Blast sparingly but decisively. Eliminate Wraith clusters before they breach. Keep all generators alive as long as possible, but prioritize defending the central one if necessary. Let none fall easily. As you said in 1863, we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. And let no structure fall in vain either. 5. Unity of command, move with purpose. Assign each troop squad a role. First squad defends generator A, second squad defends generator B, third squad defends generator C, and reserve squads rotate and reinforce where needed. You are the commander of a vast and mighty union. Make every soldier feel his part in it. 6. Final moments. Stand like stone. The final minutes will be brutal. Waves will intensify. Bases may fall. The Covenant will bring everything to bear. If the base is overwhelmed, fall back to the Spirit of Fire, rebuild lost troops immediately, and use Mac Blasts on the highest density threats. Let us have faith that right makes might, Mr. President, and in that final crucible, your might must withstand the firestorm until the timer expires. Conclusion: the light of the Union burns on. If you succeed, the Spirit of Fire's engines will burn bright again, not as a tool of war, but as a symbol of endurance. The Covenant shall break against your walls like the tides against iron, and you, sir, shall have proven once more that the soul of a free people cannot be defeated by terror or force. When you're ready, I shall prepare the Lincoln strategy for Mission 13, Escape, the Union's final charge into destiny. Until then, I remain your faithful servant and strategist, at your side till victory or until the last ember fades. So the base building part in the initial action section I just completely ignore, but not knowing that Hawks are to Hornets what ODSTs are to Marines, I asked if Hawks were an acceptable substitute for Hornets, to which he replies, "Mr. President, not only is that acceptable, it's inspired." In the face of adversity, you applied adaptive Union ingenuity, much like when you expanded the railways to meet the needs of a wartime economy. You did not mourn the lack of ironclads, you forged a new navy in the air. Let me offer you a brief Lincolnian analysis of Hawks as substitutes. First, the Spirit of the Hawks, Air Cavalry of the Union. The Hawk, upgraded from the Hornet, is faster, more heavily armed, and ideal for mobile response. If Scorpions are your ironclads, Hawks are your cavalry, striking back where the line buckles and turning back the tide. You wisely turned to them when grounded armor was unavailable. It echoes your own words, sir. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. 2. Tactical advantages of Hawks. Rapid redeployment between power core generators, excellent against infantry, light vehicles, and moderate anti-air resistance, bypass terrain and flood biomass without entanglement, and excellent for rescuing overrun flanks or chasing down artillery. Though not as durable as Scorpions, their speed and versatility makes them ideal for defense-oriented missions like repair, where mobility trumps brute force. 3. How to support them. Pair with Wolverines to eliminate Banshee threats, use Mac Blasts to eliminate anti-air wraiths or hunters before they can shoot down your Hawks, and always have extra supply pads and reactors. Hawks are resource hungry, like Lincoln's War Machine in 1864. 4. Closing counsel. You adapted. You endured. You won. That, sir, is the Union spirit. Hawks are not just an acceptable replacement, they are a strategic evolution born of necessity. I dare say Mr. Lincoln would be proud. When you are ready to complete the campaign, to board the Covenant Dreadnought and end this war on your own terms, I shall ready the final plan. Mission 13, Escape. The Last Stand. The Final Strike. The Triumph of Liberty. Say the word and your advisor will stand ready one last time. I don't know why he thinks the next mission is the last one. Just for clarification's sake, there are 15 missions in this game. He thinks that, like, every mission after, like, mission 10 is the last mission in the game, and I just don't know why, and I just ignored it. Anyway, with that confirmation, I got to work. In my first attempt, I used an army of flamethrowers and marines to guard my airlocks, which I was treating as the generators I was instructed to defend by my advisor, while using my Hawks, Heroes, and Wolverines to guard the power core, but because of my low number of Cyclopses repairing the power core, my units got worn down and we lost. Since I was instructed to fall back to the power core if I lost the bases/generators, in my next attempt, I added more Cyclopses to heal the power core faster, and pooled all of my forces at the power core. When we got overwhelmed, I sent my Hawks out to both draw aggro and also destroy our heavily weakened enemy units before they made it to the core, at which point my standing guard would finish them off. I think this was literally the only mission that I got gold on. Anyway, for Beachhead, I made sure to kinda lead my advisor in the right direction. Excellent work, advisor. Now on to Mission 13, Beachhead. I start alone as Sergeant Forge rescuing Professor Anders. We have a couple of troops to start, but once our extraction fails, we set up a forward operation base to fight our way to a new LZ. How would you suggest I proceed in a way befitting the office of Abraham Lincoln? Thankfully, it mostly worked, as my advisor had this to say. Mr. President, we now march towards the final campaign, the last crusade upon foreign soil to rescue the torchbearer of human progress, Professor Anders. This is Mission 13, Beachhead, and like General Grant's Overland campaign, it is a fight through blood and mire to secure a brighter dawn. You begin this operation as a lone commander behind enemy lines. That's not weakness, sir. That's Abraham Lincoln's specialty. Let us walk the road from desperation to dominance, as only a Union president can. Mission 13, Beachhead, the wilderness campaign of the Spirit of Fire. Determine that the thing can and shall be done, and then we shall find the way. First, Phase 1. A man, a mission, and the will of a nation. You begin as Sergeant Forge, with only a small contingent at your command. No base, no reinforcements, this is our Valley Forge, cold and surrounded with only grit to warm our hearts. Your orders. Use Forge to lead from the front, but cautiously. His shotgun tears through infantry, but he must not fall. Rescue and rally scattered units, slowly building a small but loyal force of Marines and flamethrowers. Lastly, save resources and conserve troops. Every life here is a vote casted for freedom. Engage Covenant patrols with discipline. Use cover and elevation to your advantage. Let Forge's leadership aura strengthen your soldiers. This is not the time to charge, it is the time to endure, maneuver, and outwit. 2. Phase 2. Founding the Forward Republic. Your first objective is to reach the Forward Operations Base site once your extraction fails. Just as Lincoln pushed westward in the face of adversity, so too must you plant a flag of hope behind enemy lines. When the base becomes operational, double supply pads immediately, Reactor and Vehicle Depot, for this battle tanks win wars, begin preparing a Scorpion-based push with Marines and Wolverines in support, and build turrets to defend the FOB, anti-vehicle and anti-infantry. The Covenant will not allow you to build in peace. Defend fiercely while your economy matures. Prioritize holding the base as if it were Gettysburg. 3. Phase 3, the Great Push to Liberation. You must now punch through enemy lines and reach the final landing zone for Anders' extraction. This is your march to the sea, Sherman style. Your task force should consist of 4 or more Scorpions as your heavy hitters, 2 to 3 Wolverines to neutralize Banshees, flamethrowers or upgraded Marines to handle entrenched infantry and buildings, and Forge himself leading the charge, not from the rear but beside his men. Advance slowly, clearing one encampment at a time. Use Mac Blast to eliminate Wraith concentrations and shielded turrets. Always maintain your supply lines. Reinforcements must flow like water over a broken dam. At every point, remind yourself, we do not move backward. If a Scorpion falls, replace it. If a soldier perishes, avenge him. If the LZ is under siege, we liberate it with thunder. 4. The extraction. No one left behind. When the new LZ is reached, deploy your forces in a semicircle around the beacon, defend with turrets and Wolverines for aerial support, and send Forge and the Scorpions forward to preempt the incoming wave. You are no longer fighting for survival, you are fighting to extract the future of the human race. Hold until the timer expires, use everything you've got. And if all else fails, Mac Blast the path clear, and stand your ground like Lincoln's own Iron Brigade. Epilogue, the Rescue of Progress. Mr. President, with Anders safely in your protection, you are now poised for the final act. You have crossed the rivers, climbed the ridges, fought through the jungles and fire. Now the heart of the enemy awaits. Only one chapter remains, Mission 14, Reactor. When you are ready to strike the final blow in this crusade, I shall have the Lincoln strategy prepared for you. Until then, I remain your loyal and unwavering servant, faithful to the Constitution of Victory. Phase 1 was simple enough. I collected resources, we evac Anders, Red Team smashed the nearby Covenant base, and then Captain Cutter provided us with an FOB. I immediately set up my supply pads and reactors, and got to work constructing my army of Scorpions, Marines, and Wolverines. Scorpions would be our main attacking force, Marines would provide support as our most maneuverable and flexible units, and Wolverines would provide anti-air defense when we pushed for bases. Our objective is to capture the other 3 enemy Covenant bases on the map, but it's not like we can just build up and take them out. They're constantly sending Banshees to attack us, and occasionally sending Wraiths, Ghosts, and Hunters to attack as well, so I have to use my army to defend my base while we're building up. The constant Banshees and occasional Wraiths are the biggest problems, so I set up anti-vehicle and anti-air turrets and build up Scorpions, Wolverines, and upgraded Marines until I'm at max capacity, upgrading my base and my units the whole time so that when I make my push for the first base, I can roll through them quickly with minimal losses of force. There were a lot of healing beams I used while I was building up, but eventually, my full capacity, fully upgraded army was ready, though before I decided to mobilize, I remembered something. Something game-changing. I remembered that there was a Scarab not too far from my base. An abandoned Scarab that's been taken by the Flood. A Scarab that one of my Spartans can commandeer. Jerome was my pick since his Spartan laser is stupid strong and it outranges most non-vehicle enemies in the game, but he was in a Wraith, so I sent him in the Wraith to go fight the incoming wave, and after they blew up his Wraith, I called him back, made a Hornet, sent the Hornet to where the Scarab was to open that part of the map for me, dropped Jerome there via Pelican, and used Jerome to Spartan laser the tentacles holding the Scarab, and then commandeer said Scarab. This was big. Big enough that I actually went back to my advisor to revise the plan. I was able to secure a Scarab, but my FOB keeps getting attacked by Banshees and other Covenant forces. The Scorpions, Wolverines, and Marines you suggested are defending the base excellently, and the Scarab is currently destroying the enemy bases, and additionally, I've upgraded my Marines to ODSTs, so I can drop some at the Scarab to defend it if necessary. How would Abraham Lincoln proceed with the battle in this state? Mr. President, you have transformed a desperate landing into a righteous rout. The battlefield is yours, and yet, the work is not done. Let us apply the finishing stroke of Lincolnian resolve to bring finality to this engagement. Status report. A Republic Ascendant. Scarabs in Union hands are akin to captured Confederate ironclads turned against their makers. ODSTs, the elite of the elite, are now yours to command as the airborne emissaries of liberty. Finally, your Wolverines, Scorpions, and fortifications are holding the line with steadfast resolve. This is not a battle, sir. It's a final orchestration of victory, the Lincolnian Doctrine, phase of consolidation and judicious annihilation. I am a slow walker, but I never walk back. 1. Defending the homeland. Reinforce the FOB. Your base is the new Union capital, under constant assault from the remnants of a crumbling empire. Therefore, keep Wolverines on patrol, especially to the north and east flanks where Banshees favor approach. Establish anti-air turrets on all sides if possible, and cycle weakened Scorpions back for repairs. Replace with fresh armor from the factory. Use ODST drops not only to reinforce Scarab operations, but to respond to any base breach instantly. A counterattack from the heavens, Lincoln style. 2. Securing the field, Scarab Doctrine of Total War. Your Scarab, like Sherman's March, must not merely win, it must shatter enemy capacity to wage war. Use the Scarab to eliminate Covenant base infrastructure, supply pads, reactors, and barracks first. This is strategic strangulation. Then send ODSTs to secure and hold the ruins of each base it destroys. Last, escort it with Wolverines and ODSTs for anti-air coverage and forge for moral authority and shotgun diplomacy. Your goal is to render the enemy blind, breathless, and broke. 3. The Lincolnian Endgame, the Beacon of Hope. Once resistance collapses and the LZ is secure, deploy remaining forces in defensive arcs around the LZ, rotate ODST squads between the Scarab and the base, you are the bridge between fire and fortitude, and do not advance the Scarab without scouting. Even the mightiest engine may fall to ambush. If all your objectives are complete, leave nothing standing but the ideals you defend. Final note, Mr. President, your conduct on the field mirrors your conduct in history. Strategic, deliberate, unyielding. You took what the enemy gave and turned it into a tool of emancipation. That Scarab is not just a weapon, it is your proclamation of force, burning away tyranny with its beam of justice. When you are ready, sir, we face Mission 14 Reactor, the penultimate conflict. And I, your loyal advisor, shall be prepared to see it done the Lincoln way. So with my advisor's blessing to use the Scarab in a way befitting Abraham Lincoln, I use the Scarab to completely dismantle the next Covenant base's infrastructure, and then I send all my Scorpions to assist in the demolition of the base itself. These Scorpions will now help to hold this base as my Scarab continues onward. The Scarab, assisted by my single Hornet and ODSTs that I drop to cover and reinforce it in a defensive arc, pretty much melt the third base with little issue overall, even though they had to work their way through an energy shield first. I replenish my units as needed, particularly my Scorpions guarding the second base, and then I build up my third and final base in order to give my Scarab some reinforcements as it takes on the last base. Having tons of resources, and knowing that the last base is extremely well fortified and has a Scarab protecting it, I actually set up a field armory for the first time in the run and maxed everything out. Then I primarily built up more Scorpions and Wolverines, and once I'm satisfied with my forces, I move for the final push. Their Scarab crumbles to dust, and I'm able to smash their base to bits and win the mission. Mission 13 was a long, hard-fought campaign, but we took all 4 bases and brought the Covenant to their knees. Now the Union is relying on you, Advisor, to create a Lincolnian tactic for our penultimate mission, Mission 14, Reactor. Mr. President, the weight of destiny presses upon us. With Mission 13 behind us, a campaign worthy of Gettysburg valor and Vicksburg's resolve, we now stand at the gates of the final forge, Mission 14, Reactor. This is a mission not of conquest, but of control. The Covenant seek to harness technology that could enslave or destroy. We, Mr. President, shall ensure that the power of the ancients serves the cause of liberty. This is not a time for rashness, but for a calculated, deliberate march, as Lincoln himself would command. Mission 14, Reactor. Securing the arsenal of freedom. Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves. Now let us ensure the Covenant's hands remain empty. Objective summary. Control the Central Forerunner Reactor. Prevent the Covenant from capturing it, and establish and hold a strong base presence while locking down control towers. Lincolnian strategy. The iron grid of the Union. 1. Opening the campaign. Foundations first. The Covenant will move swiftly, but Lincoln's wisdom favors patience and fortification over recklessness. Immediately secure the nearest reactor control node. Send Forge and early troops to claim and defend it. While doing so, establish your main base with the following setup. 2 supply pads, upgrade ASAP, 1 reactor, 1 vehicle depot, 1 barracks, or air pad depending on your needs. Lincoln's maxim, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. Build your economy before you wield your hammer. 2. The Trident of Control. Divide and guard. There are 3 Forerunner towers that control the central reactor. The Covenant will try to claim them, and you must treat each like a border state in rebellion. Never ceded, never ignored. Your strategy: ODSTs to secure each node, drop them directly onto towers when needed, Forge and Scorpions as mobile reaction force, patrol between towers, and Wolverines at the ready. Banshee raids are frequent and punishing. Hold at least 2 towers constantly to prevent the Covenant from making progress towards reactor control. 3 if possible, but do not overextend. Control is maintained by endurance, not overstretch. 3. Base defense, Fortress of the Republic. You will be under siege. Turrets on all base corners prioritized with anti-air and anti-vehicle upgrades. Wolverines garrisoned just behind turret lines. Also Mac Blasts reserved for counter-offensives against massed enemy units. If any base falls, you will not lose just land, but morale. Treat every structure as sacred ground. 4. The March to the Core. Emancipation through energy. Once you control the towers long enough and gain access to the reactor core, send a strong force to defend it immediately. 3 or more Scorpions, ODSTs or upgraded Marines, and Forge himself the Shield of Liberty. Build a second base nearby if allowed. This reactor is now the Gettysburg of this mission. Once taken, you must hold it against every charge. 5. The Final Blow, Securing the Future. Once all towers are secured and the Covenant is broken, wipe out any remaining Covenant bases, scorch the earth if necessary, with malice towards none applies only to the just, against tyrants we bring fire and iron, and use the Scarab again if available. Let their own weapons condemn them. When the final base falls, hold the map in full, not for pride, but for the protection of the human cause. Final Council. Mr. President, we are nearing the end of our campaign, and your leadership, your fortitude, it's all become a beacon. This mission is not about glory, it's about ensuring that no hand unworthy shall wield the tools of power. Win this battle, and the final mission, escape, shall be ours to plan. One more trial awaits, and I will stand ready by your side until the Union's flag flies unchallenged across the stars. I have no idea what he's talking about. What he just described is completely different from the mission that we actually do, but Reactor wasn't particularly difficult, just a bit of a slog. A literal uphill battle. The objective here is to hitch this FTL core to an elephant and escort it uphill through 3 Covenant bases, so I start as suggested with supply pads and reactors, and I get to building up ODSTs, Scorpions, and Wolverines. It takes a second attempt to start right, to actually get the plan off the ground, but I hitch the core to the elephant, move it to the back of the base, and fend off a couple of offensive waves until I'm ready to push back. I always equip my base with anti-air turrets and garrison 2 Wolverines at each base as I capture them, as suggested by my advisor, since there's only one path to my captured bases, through my forces. So the real danger is in air units like Banshees and Vampires bypassing my army and attacking my bases from the skies. Luckily, my first base is left in peace as I encircle, strangle, and capture the first Covenant base. I take the time to build it up as a supply line closer to the front line, taking time to upgrade my units with my resource buildup, and then when I'm good and ready, I start the climb. The third base is protected by a Scarab, but even with base turrets supporting it, it's not a match for volleys and canister shells at this stage. Unfortunately, we lose Sergeant Forge here until the end of the level because he somehow gets stuck. But even without him, things are going well, as we have 3 bases captured and only 1 left. Unfortunately, after ascending for one final time, the last base is much stronger and has an even more powerful Scarab that takes out my entire offensive. With 15,000 resources at this point, I just start spamming ODST launches, and I lob so many at the Scarab that it gets caught on their bodies and starts bugging out. That gives me just enough time to finish it off, revive my Spartans, and regroup for one final push. Well, they got another Scarab. That thing's really starting to piss me off! I regroup again, and this time, I take the time to build up my forces for a Scarab level threat. I get a field armory, max it out, and absolutely roll over their base, completing the mission and still getting a bronze, funnily enough. Advisor, without your guidance, without your brilliant Abraham Lincoln strategies, I surely would not have made it this far. And the Union surely would have fallen in the face of the unbridled might of the Covenant. The brave men and women who fought this war with their advanced future technologies were indispensable to the war effort, but without your stratagem and direction, all would have been for naught. As we move on to the final mission of our campaign, I, as Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States of America and leader of the Union, would like to personally extend my thanks for your support and hard work. Should we falter in this final hour, I would like for you to know that it has been an honor and a privilege to lead this war with you at my side. May God bless the United States, and may God bless the Union. Now, Advisor, please impart unto me our war plan for Mission 15, and advise me one final time. Mr. President, I am deeply honored by your words. From Harvest to Arcadia, from the burning sands to the Dome of Light, and through the depths of the Forerunner constructs, you have led the Union not merely with force, but with righteous cause. And now, we stand together shoulder to shoulder at the terminus of this war. Mission 15, Escape. Let us not falter. Let us carry the torch of liberty through the flames one final time. Mission 15, Escape. The last measure of devotion. The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. Sir, this mission is a race against time. Not for conquest, but for deliverance. The enemy seeks not to defeat us with arms, but to bury us in rubble and fire. The shield world collapses. Our troops are scattered, and the Union's last hope, Professor Anders, has been taken. But as Lincoln said, the occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. Lincolnian Strategy, Operation Starward Exodus. Phase 1, Gather the Broken, Forge the Brave. The mission begins with scattered remnants, survivors, isolated and on the run. Your first act is not to fight, but to reunite. Send Sergeant Forge to rally all available units. Rescue Scorpions, Warthogs, Marines, and Elephants scattered across the map. I am nothing, but truth is everything. Forge is not just a commander now. He is the embodiment of unity, and unity is how we prevail. Prioritize mobility, not firepower. Speed and cohesion are your shield. Phase 2. Establish the final bastion. After linking up with survivors, you will reach a base site. This is where you plant the flag. This is Union ground. Construct supply pads, prioritize resource flow, vehicle depot for Scorpions, your hammer of destiny, barracks or air pads for ODST or Hornets, depending on the enemy's pressure, and a reactor to power your progress. Your base is not your fortress, your courage is. Build quickly, efficiently, and prepare for waves of Covenant assault. Phase 3, the gate must hold. The central gate is your Gettysburg Ridge. It must not fall. All efforts must be made to keep the Covenant at bay while Anders prepares the slipspace portal. There need to be Wolverines for air defense, ODST drops to reinforce weak points, and Scorpions and Forge to counter enemy armor. Use Mac Blasts to break Elite or Locust rushes. Time is short, and the enemy will not relent. If a gate is breached, fall back to the inner defenses, but only if necessary. Every minute counts. Phase 4, the final push. Forge's last stand. Once Anders is secure and ready to evacuate, there will be a final act of sacrifice. Forge volunteers to remain behind, to detonate the reactor manually, ensuring the Covenant's end and the Union's escape. Mr. President, this is the ultimate Lincolnian virtue. Self-sacrifice not for glory, but for peace. Escort Anders to the LZ with all surviving forces, Scarab or Scorpions if you have them, and ODST to clear her path. Then, with a final salute, Forge completes the mission, laying down his life as a martyr of mankind so that others may live free. Lincoln's final words to the Union. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. Mr. President, when your people return home from this alien war, they will not remember the tech or the ships. They will remember that when the fires of war threatened to consume all, you stood firm, a sentinel of justice. They will remember you, and I, as your loyal advisor, shall forever be proud to have served beside you. God bless you, Mr. President. God bless the Union, and may the light of freedom shine eternal through the stars. Well, that was pretty good. On that rallying note, my advisor is right. This mission is a race against time. The shield world is about to blow, the battlefield is covered in the strongest Covenant, Flood, and Sentinels of the run, and we've got to destroy them all and unlock 6 interfaces to make it out of here alive. I immediately start building my base and microing Red Team to gather supplies and stop the Covies from being able to get a foothold on the base right next to ours. These 2 bases will be our primary FOBs here. In my first couple of attempts, I kept getting attacked by fully upgraded Covenant units before I had a chance to build an infrastructure, so I kept having to restart, but eventually, I got that one lucky start where the Covenant just kinda stood around. I made sure to bomb them as payback and to weaken them before we engaged them. My advisor recommended that I either use ODST or Hornets, so I decided to use Hornets since they're more useful than infantry at this stage, they're more mobile, they're airborne, they can be upgraded into Hawks, and the Flood in particular don't have many units to counter them. I build up my Hornet army at my first base and begin production of my Scorpion army at my second. I also make sure to max out a field armory for more Hawks and Scorpions, stronger turrets so that my bases can defend themselves, stronger Mac Blasts to take out the 3 Scarabs around the map, faster unit production time to replace units and reinforce my army more expediently, and of course adrenaline for my Spartans. With about 15 minutes left on the clock, I wipe out the neighboring Covenant base, build my next base, and began to make my way around the map counterclockwise, taking out Scarabs, Covenant Revenants, and the Flood as I moved. Unfortunately, with about 3 minutes left, I took out the final Scarab, but I still hadn't cleared out the Flood yet, and I eventually ended up almost running out of time, so I reloaded and tried again from when I finished building my army. This attempt was money. I did everything again, but faster, harder, more efficient. I won battles and seized fortresses at rates that would have made Lincoln's head spin, and eventually, I cleared out all enemies from around the interlocks, deactivated them, and opened the portal. With that, we escaped the shield world, and I beat Halo Wars on legendary difficulty as Abraham Lincoln. Unfortunately, even though I beat the campaign on Legendary, the game didn't give me the achievement, which really sucked. Well, I let my advisor know that we won the day, and this is how the conversation went. Outstanding work, advisor. We reign victorious. With the noble sacrifice of Sergeant John Forge, the Spirit of Fire, our Union, was able to defeat the Covenant, the Flood, and the Sentinels, and escape the Shield World. This was all for a challenge run for YouTube, where I had to beat Halo Wars as Abraham Lincoln. Do you have any final words for the viewers that you'd like to share as Abraham Lincoln? Mr. President, it would be my solemn honor. Final address to the viewers, in the spirit of Abraham Lincoln. Fellow citizens of this great digital republic, today we lay down our arms, not in defeat, but in the triumph of perseverance, unity, and strategic resolve. Against enemies unknown and trials unthinkable, we stood steadfast beneath the banner of liberty and reason. Though the tools of this war were forged in the crucible of the future, the heart that wielded them beat with the principles of old: courage, sacrifice, and a belief that a just cause is worth any cost. The Union endured, and not merely in name. It endured because good men and women, even across time and space, refused to surrender their ideals. As Sergeant Forge gave his last full measure of devotion, so too did we remember that freedom is not won by the sword alone, but by the conviction that we, together, shall rise above division, above fear, and above despair. This campaign, though clothed in fiction, reveals a deeper truth, that when faced with overwhelming odds, a steady mind and a principled heart can yet alter the course of history, or perhaps even a YouTube challenge run. Let it be remembered then, not just as a victory of arms, but as a triumph of spirit. May the stars remember the Spirit of Fire, and may you, dear viewers, remember that every mission is winnable when you lead like Lincoln. God bless you all, and may the Union live eternal. And with that fine ending, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.
Captain, wake up. Something has happened.